Ashani, I got a question for you.
Shoot.
How old do you feel?
Okay, well, first of all, I am 34.
Same.
I'm proud. Oh, no, isn't that so cool? I love it. Even though I'm 34, I do feel like I'm 40 or 45. But also, yeah, I feel like I feel older than I actually am, but I definitely have moments where I'm like, wow, I'm acting like a 5-year-old, or oh my gosh, I'm like a 15-year-old right now. Do you know what I mean? Like, I have such a spectrum.
I'm so curious, what makes you like, what's the 40-year-old in you? Like, how do you feel that? Like, how do you know you feel 40?
Well, I don't know. It's just a feeling. Like, I do get reflected back from friends of mine that I'm like an old soul, or I feel very wise, and I just I'm surprised by the way that I show up sometimes in certain interactions, and I'm like, oh, that was really wise of me, just like a moment where I'm like, oh, that was wise. And then I notice, because I do have friends as well that are older than me, and I feel this I feel more comfortable with people that are older too. So that sometimes I'm like, oh, I feel like this is speaking to my soul in a way. You know what I mean?
It's hitting deep inside.
It's hitting deep. How about you? Like, how old do you feel?
I feel the opposite. I don't ever feel 40. If anything, I feel like there's like a 27-year-old.
That's
in
really
me.
specific.
It's very specific.
Yeah.
It's like I often feel 34, so that's my age. But I feel like there's a part that's just like a little bit younger in there that's like, oh, not quite like wanting to do the adult stuff.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm still a grown-up. You know?
That's a good one.
Yeah, that inner feeling. But it's interesting about how I ask this question to people sometimes, particularly when we're trying to kind of explore the different parts of people that show up and different ages that they feel. Like, it's interesting to kind of compare our biological age compared to how old we feel.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's funny because I notice when people do ask me my age, like, I'm happy to share my age, but I notice the other person when they want to ask the question, there's this feeling of like hesitancy, like they're scared they're going to offend me. And I just find that really fascinating, because I think that also kind of comes within culture, like the culture that we live in. And there's like this feeling of shame or embarrassment about getting older, or it's like not okay to talk about age.
Yeah, or that we shouldn't be open about it. There's something, you use the word like shame. There's something shameful about age.
Yeah, like there's a sensitivity to it. Who offers the best advice in your family? Is it you? Play the Medibank Family Roast to find out. A card game designed to get families connecting and talking. Because when the bonds of family are stronger, Australia is stronger. So get around the dinner table. A tasty conversation is about to be served. Search Medibank Family Roast. Live better with Medibank.
I like what you bring up around culture, because I certainly think, particularly as women, aging still feels like one of the most unacceptable things that you can do, right?
Yeah.
We have such a fascination with staying young, looking young, the kind of, Korean face masks and peptides this, and I don't know, all the other trends that are kind of trending that I'm not across. I just said peptides because I heard it online. But, all these things that are kind of around looking as youthful as we can and being as youthful as we can. But then I'm also thinking about the ways in which older people and older women have been portrayed in media, but even I'm thinking kids' storybooks. Is it Hansel and Gretel where she puts the kids in the oven and she's an old witch, and Cruella de Vil and Snow White's got the mean evil stepmother. Those older women in the kind of the fairy tales that we had growing up were not portrayed as wise, strong women. They were portrayed as mean or a bit gross or witches in some way.
It's so interesting you're painting that out, because it makes me sad that we it's so subtle, but it's saying such a big message. For women that are older, you get more grumpier. But actually, kind of what you were speaking to, I'm actually, what happens if it's just when you get older, you just know what you want, you go for it, and you don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? And it's I really admire that confidence that women have that are older than me.
Yeah.
They've seen things, they've moved through things, and I think that deserves way more respect in society.
Totally. There's this disconnect between what older people actually have to offer versus this kind of obsession with looking young. Because I think to, my mum and my grandmothers and, gosh, what incredible women. Like, I want to be like them when I grow up. Yeah. And that's got nothing to do with wrinkles or grey hair. It's got to do all with the people they have become and are and were, and, you know, the strength and wisdom.
Yeah, 100%. And it's interesting because it also gets me thinking about, you know, I love the Kardashians. I've shared that on our podcast before. I love it, like that matriarchal energy. But it's really fascinating because I know Kris Jenner, you know, obviously had that massive facelift and she looks amazing. And it's really interesting because of the validation she's getting for it, but also like even her daughters, they're like, oh, wow, like I can't wait to turn 70. I think she's 70 but then it's interesting even in that comment because what you're saying is, oh, I can still look younger when I'm that age. Yeah. So subtle, but it's just really a mixed message.
I think as well, like I did a bit of a deep dive into some online trends.
Yeah.
And, you know, things like looksmaxxing.
Oh
so like very male targeted, right? Because I know we're talking about women here, but also like let's not forget the pressures.
Totally.
The cultural pressures that are put on men to kind of look the best that they possibly can with this whole looksmaxxing kind of trend. I was actually listening to a podcast, and not typically a podcast I would listen to. It was very in the realm of looksmaxxing manosphere kind of stuff, and I really hope it doesn't stuff up my algorithm now so I'm going to be fed this kind of stuff on my algorithms. But like this guy was being interviewed on the podcast and he was sort of giving this analogy where, you know, men are designed to be providers for women, and so being a provider doesn't make you any different to the next man. So what's going to be the difference? How good you look. And so you need to invest in looking good if you want to get respect from other men and get women to like you. Wow. And I was just like, oh gosh, there's so much that feels problematic in that. But also like the looksmaxxing trends, some of them have gone really far to the point where they can almost be dangerous for people.
That's so scary. And because I know I looked into looksmaxxing, but just for anyone tuning in that hasn't heard of the term, like what actually is it?
It's essentially this idea of like maximizing your looks, but you're doing it with the view of gaining respect from others and basically attracting female attention if you're a guy.
I don't know if you've ever felt this before, but I feel like I've definitely met people before where they're grown adults, but they act like children in a way. And I get really curious. I'm like, what's going on there? You know?
I'd be curious to know if you mean sort of like act like children as in like very lighthearted, jokey, like fun, playful kind of vibe, or actually if their life is like, you're not kind of doing some of the things that we would expect adults to do. You can't sort of manage some responsibilities. This kind of like failure to launch.
Yes, it's the second one. Because I think we should all have a child, like, you know, we should play, we should have fun, of course, but definitely the second one. Yeah,
that's just kind of like Peter Pan syndrome, pop psychology would call it.
I've met some Peter Pans in my time.
Yes, this idea that kind of people, for whatever reason, haven't sort of met certain milestones that we would expect them to meet, not just from kind of like a cultural societal expectation, but actually kind of things that they need to be able to do in order to function efficiently and effectively in life.
I think there is a reality though that, you know, as you get older, we are getting closer to death, and that can be a lot to sit with.
And we don't like to, as a culture, as a society, particularly in Western society, we don't like to talk about death. We don't like to feel like death is a part of life, I want to say. We keep old people in nursing homes and grief can be very sort of private and separate versus cultures that, you know, really kind of bring death and grieving into kind of the day-to-day fabrics of how they experience life. I know many cultures will actually keep the body of the dead person in the house for a period of time before it's, you know, buried or cremated, and you know things like Day of the Dead that we celebrate, etc. So I think actually part of our Western way of living actually amplifies this fear that we have around death and the anxiety that we have around it. And there's actually a lot of research that's been done around death anxiety. So there are some friends and colleagues of mine, Ross and Rachel Menzies, and this is one of their main areas of work at Sydney University. And they look at how the fear of death potentially actually underpins a lot of other mental health conditions that we might experience.
Wow.
So it's a real thing that people can experience, this overwhelming fear of dying.
So how do we build a healthier relationship with aging?
Well, we got to accept that we're all going to die one day.
Yep.
And that's a uncomfortable reality of life.
I can even feel the uncomfortability right now, being like, yep.
Yep. Has anyone heard the Casey Chambers song? We're all going to die someday, Lord. We're all going to die someday.
No, but I really like you singing it on the podcast.
That is over the hill and we're all going to die someday. It's like a very diddling, 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 but it's all like singing that we're going to die. Anyway, if you haven't heard it, check it out. But it's this idea that like we go, oh, death and dying, and like it feels so scary and confronting, but it is a reality that we need to accept, that it is a part of the progression of and circle of life. Aging is universal. We will all get older, and that will come with challenges, as many things in life do. So I'm really big on kind of leaning into this sort of acceptance of age rather than trying to like fight it or enter this tug of war with it, because typically when we sort of try and fight something that is gonna happen regardless of how hard we fight it, we can add a lot of kind of stress to our life that we don't need to.
Yeah, totally.
The other thing I'll say here is that often as we get older, it feels like time passes quicker. I don't know if you get that feeling of like it gets to sort of the end of the year and it's like, oh my gosh, another year has passed. It's already that time of year.
So true.
And that is often because as we get older, we tend to have more sameness in the days and in the weeks. You know, we get up, we go to work, we come home, we have dinner, we sleep, we do it again, right? So there's this sense of sameness, and the brain kind of clumps stuff that feels the same together. So one of the ways that we can kind of like overcome this feeling of life is just passing us by is firstly stop and savor the small moments.
I like that.
When you have your routine cup of coffee in the morning.
Or matcha.
If you're Ashani. Stop and really savor it. Really taste it. You know, sit outside, feel the sun shining on you. Even if it's a kind of normal routine part of the day, savor those moments. And find ways to bring novelty and newness into life. You know, try new activities and hobbies, and this kind of novelty, the brain remembers it and it likes it, and it will feel like perhaps time is not passing by quite as fast.
Oh, I like that.
So if you found yourself thinking about getting older and aging lately, and you want to do a little bit more self-reflection on this topic, then I've got a few questions for you that you can journal over or just spend some time thinking about. So first question, what beliefs about aging have you inherited that perhaps might be worth questioning or even rewriting? Second question, when you look back at your younger self, in what ways have you grown as a person? What character traits or qualities do you have that have actually improved with time? Next question, what would it mean for you to see aging as growth instead of loss? Next question, who in your life, whether it's someone you know or perhaps even a celebrity you admire, can you look up to and reflect on the way in which they've aged in a way that you admire? And lastly, how might embracing age change the way that you spend your time, the way that you care for your body, or the way that you connect with other people?